My mother rang, and this time it wasn't about what she wanted. Your dad wants you to take him home. He thinks this isn't home anymore. My mom was recovering from cataract surgery and dealing with my father's daily antics. She's almost 77, and he's almost 83. My parents are almost alive in America. I asked my mom to hand the phone to my father, whose voice was barely audible. I explained to him that the 7th floor Fremont apartment is his home. He'd been paying the rent for 2 years. Where do you think home is, I don't know, he whispered sadly. My father suffers from dementia. I took you home, Dad, 10 years ago. Your family home is in Herat. You didn't like it. You told me not to even bury you there. You're in America now. This is your home. He didn't want to hear that. I figured out that at that moment, my dad was lonely and bored. He rarely ever asks me or my 2 siblings to take him anywhere, unless it's the bank where he withdraws $20 each time and buys a muffin and drink, or he wants to install a battery in his watch. My father spends most of his time watching TV, eating, or sleeping. He might put on his pajamas and robe and flip-flops and walk around the building where they live, or look through his collection of tattered Farsi books. But he doesn't remember what he reads. Despite his dementia, he never forgets that he is in exile. I feel that sense of homelessness he feels. We always had a roof over our head, but we became nationless as a country, as a family, in 1982 when we fled Afghanistan. We were part of 6 million refugees escaping the Soviet invasion. My dad was a civil servant. He loved his job. He was known for his artistic handwriting and sense of humor. When he made a joke, the room roared with laughter. My father's father was a renowned modernist and writer. I grew up thinking everybody should be a writer. I was a little girl running around the orchard compound where we lived. I ate mulberries and pomegranates, ran around the creek with my 24 cousins. But everything that felt good began to end after the 1978 communist coup. Bombs dropped. My father's favorite brother disappeared, and a rocket hit my school. I watched my classmate die, his head severed from his body. The blood stained my soul. The image shaped my adulthood. My dad decided it was time to leave his country after that. So we loaded up our belongings on 2 donkeys, put on our burqas, and walked across the desert for 6 hours. It was the front line between the Mujahideen and the Soviet Union. We didn't have to live in refugee camps in Iran or Pakistan because, you see, we were the elite who made it to America. Immigrants come to America for better opportunities. Refugees come here to be safe. But is safety enough? Can it give us a sense of belonging? My dad barely knew English. He could no longer find meaningful work. He sat at home, watching TV, becoming depressed. I tried to fit in as a misfit nerd in a school where it was cool to be dumb. I learned English quickly, and I tried to find home, but I couldn't find the mulberries. Our orchard was replaced by a 2-bedroom apartment, and none of my first cousins lived here. We were part of the diaspora now, disconnected, dispersed. Welcome to America. I feel homeless as an exile every day. But I speak the language of America, and I can adapt. My father hasn't, even after 30 years. He's still waiting to return home. That home is no longer Afghanistan for either of us. I returned in 2000, and I stayed for 7 years in Herat, traveling all across Afghanistan. I went there in 2000, and I quit my daily journalism job here in order to freelance abroad. But I also went to feed my nostalgia. Those of you who are immigrants know what I mean. To climb those trees, to eat the pomegranates in the orchard again. When I got there, half of the trees were gone. The creek was dry, and the stadium where we used to celebrate festivals and holidays, the Taliban had turned it into the execution fields. You've heard of the Taliban, haven't you? The home I had imagined for 18 years had vanished. My father returned and joined me 2 years later, full of anticipation. He had been waiting for this moment for so long. Roads were paved, 4-story houses resembling wedding cakes had been built, and the bombs had temporarily stopped dropping. The US had come to save us. But he quickly discovered that he's a stranger in his birthplace. He believes in women's rights and freedom of religion, ideals no longer welcome in Afghanistan's present. After that trip, his depression deepened. He couldn't even dream about going home anymore. We both returned to America with the acceptance to be eternal exiles. But you see, acceptance is not salvation. It's similar to losing a loved one. The pang of loss and loneliness hits in unexpected moments. A familiar scent, the aroma of rice and cumin, can prickle. It can bring back images that don't even exist anymore. It's as if our homeland never was, as if the years of war wiped it away. It was a figment of our imagination. My father and I, we are connected by this loss, his much greater than mine. But there are moments, albeit fleeting moments, when a place can feel like home. That evening, when my mom called, I was invited out to dinner with my little girls to a friend's house. But I couldn't leave my dad like that, in that state. So I strapped my 2 girls in their car seats, drove the 15 minutes to my father's place, and waited for him at the security gate. He came down in his robe and pajamas, toenails unclipped. He took baby steps to my car, insisting he didn't need my help. I took his hand, thin and wrinkled, and I helped him in the passenger seat. I buckled him in. Kuja berem aqa? Where do we go? Can you take me to your brother or sister's house? I couldn't, because they were both busy doing other things. Everybody's busy in America. So I took him to the Afghan watchmaker, who installed a new battery in his watch for the 4th time that month. He welcomed him. Then my daughter, my toddler, Andisha, took his hand and showed all her 8 teeth in a smile. My dad reciprocated with a toothless smile. I wondered where to take him. The sun was about to set. The air was crisp. The wind was blowing, but the sky was clear. Spring was setting in. Dad, let's go for a drive around Fremont. You might like your new city. He had been driving through the streets of Fremont for 24 years. But 7 years ago, he had a stroke, and he could no longer drive. And he had no memory of being here. The stroke also made him mute. He barely ever talked. So I drove him to the hills. The rolling fields sparkled to show the emerald brilliance. 10-bedroom mansions hid behind oak trees as the road curved to reveal the bay. Pink, purple, white blossoms, the emergence of spring. The sunset covered half the sky. A deep orange painted the background. My dad noticed all of it, and he commented, "This is a nice place." It's a big city. I like it here. Dad, I'll take you out every day if you want. You just have to ask me, my brother or sister. Yeah. Then my father paused, and with a tinge of fear, he asked if there was a war in Fremont. No, Dad, it's peaceful here. That's why we're here. That's why we left Afghanistan. Yes, it's peaceful, he agreed. Then I asked him if he wanted to go out to dinner with us. And he said, no, take me home to your mother. For exiles, home is illusory. I dropped off my father at the security gate, looked at my 2 hungry girls, and drove toward the sunset. That home is sometimes found in a place, but often it's in the people who stand by those exiles, in the people who are part of their broken lives, who can feel and empathize with their loss. For my dad, sometimes, that home is in my mother. Her warm eyes, her beautiful smile, her high-pitched voice. And other times, it's in nature. The blossoms and oak trees were part of his childhood in Herat. The same sunset made his eyes dazzle in amazement. For my dad, his sense of homelessness was cured, if only for that night. For you see, exiles, for us, home is a state of mind. It's ephemeral. It's like happiness. It ebbs and flows. We live in an oasis of safety, but the racket in our head, made up of the memories of the homeland, steal that sense of peace, that sense of rootedness. Reliving the past does not repair the damage. It just reminds us that what we have will never return. So what are we supposed to do to achieve that sense of peace, that sense of belonging? You let go of the past. You relish in the present. You relish in the people who have remained with you. You make new memories in the place that you live in now. I can find home in my father. He is 8 decades of Afghanistan's history, 40 years of peace under the monarchy, the relentless struggle of women and human rights. His face is creased and worn, at war with himself and the rest of the world. He is kind and generous, stubborn and yearning to be independent, just like Afghanistan today. As long as he is with me, I am home. Thank you.